The new Mercedes C450 AMG, it's the model between the normal C-Class and the high-top AMG version. You wanted to see this vehicle here on Autogefühl, your #1 resource for in-depth car reviews and your #1 community to discuss cars. With Thomas, and as I said, the model in between, is it an AMG Light? We're going to find out with the exterior, interior, and of course the driving experience here with the C450 AMG with all-wheel drive. Taking the normal C-Class, for example, normal price in Germany starts at 32,000 euros. Here the C450 AMG with the V6, we're soon going to show you what's beneath those, is at 60,000 euros. And well, that's kind of double the price, so really have a price difference. However, it's 20,000 euros cheaper than the top AMG model. So you do save some money, and well, what do you lose? We're going to find out that about the driving experience. What do we have here in the front is this special front grille, and it's kind of very interesting structure because if you look at it from the side, it looks kind of plain black, but from your perspective from the front, you see that you got these silver shiny elements in the front, and I think especially from the distance, it creates a very great, you know, this kind of diamond grid, very special stuff. In this 450 AMG version, you also got a special lower bumper. It's stronger and also got this aluminum style contrast here to the racing red color, and also bigger air intakes in the lower part. Here we got the optional LED headlights, which also include this kind of great handcraft, but they are again always optional. Looking at the side profile here in the C450 AMG, we have the bigger alloys. In this case, we have the 19-inch, and I think they look very beautiful. We also got the AMG badge. So the question is it a real AMG or not? I would say yes, definitely AMG. I talked to them and they say they really count these models also into their sales figures. It's just that the naming process is a little bit different. You know, the true AMG models, they are called now Mercedes AMG something. And this one here is Mercedes C450 AMG behind that one. Well, whatever. So yeah, try to get some order in that. But there's a V6 already under the hood, and it's very powerful, I can already tell you so far. What else do we have here on the exterior? We got the contrasting mirror caps, and then if we go on to the side profile, the windows there are quite steep, classic sedan style. However, they are a little bit darkened here at the rear part. And then this rear ending is very classic in the design, and I can show you that in detail. The length of 4.68 m is ending right here, and whereas the front is very beautiful to me and very modern, I think the rear looks a little bit outdated. And well, the reason is that for my personal European taste, it doesn't really comply with a design that was more appealing for the Chinese market, especially with those taillights. It is different, however, with a new C-Class Coupe. A review of that one will also be quite soon on Autogefühl. So also check out to subscribe that you always keep updated with that one. The Coupe will then more have these horizontal taillights like the S-Class Coupe or the S-Class Cabriolet then, and this is more beautiful to me. So I'm not really okay with the rear here with the sedan. Especially for the C450, you already got the AMG exhaust pipes. very huge, and they also have a great sound. Let's take a look what's beneath the hood. Quite a beautiful engine layout. You see the red contrast here corresponding to the exterior color, but the rest, you see most of it as is covered, and well, that prevents, for example, from dust going into the engine. This one here is the 3-liter V6, 367 horsepower. However, the other one, the C63, the bigger AMG model, that one would then have the V8 with 476 horsepower. So actually way more still, and the acceleration figure difference is about 1 second. This one here is about 5 seconds from 0 to 100 kilometers. The C63 is about 4 seconds from 0 to 100 kilometers or 0 to 60 miles an hour. Does it then make such a huge difference? Well, actually not. Here we got the all-wheel drive combined. The C63 has the rear-wheel drive. That one makes this one more suitable, for example, for winter times or in general slippery conditions. And I mean, if you're not such a race driver and go on a racetrack with this one, for example, you will still have great lap times because of the all-wheel drive. Kind of makes it a little bit easier to drive then. So overall, I think this is the more clever choice than for the AMG model, because you pay way less money than the high-top version, and you got a more suitable car for the everyday driving. Now let's take a look inside with a kind of solid door handle, and we find a lot of nice details because we have the C450 AMG. That we not only have the sport details on the exterior, but also on the interior. For example, my favorites are these brushed aluminum parts at the inside of the doors. This is where you can control the seat, also control the length of the seating area here with pushing it back or forward. And also the seat heating is placed right here. By the way, the quality here of the knobs is really superb. This one feels very good. And also just the clickings and so on. So they paid really attention to the detail there. Then let's look at the interior. We got this AMG steering wheel with a flattened end. That's really great stuff. Then rather classic instruments in the middle part. Then about the seats. These ones here are the optional performance seats, about 2,500 euros extra. Do not go for them. They are very uncomfortable, I can tell you. And they look, of course, have this great sporty racing design. But two disadvantages, they can cause back pain, and they are also in this full leather trim. You can also pick the normal seats, basically, for the C-Class. Then the performance models, like also here the C450, have the sport seats, and they have then in the middle this mbcars microfiber and outside faux leather. And this one is really great, then the best combination. And you can just go with the series seats then here with the C450 and don't pick the optional performance seats. Then let's continue. We see the middle console has this special control stick. And there's, by the way, a special surface as well. This is resistance against scratches. And however, I think it's a little bit overdone, because I would just need that one, like to cruise the menu and to control everything there. And I mean, what you use this for then, it's a little bit over then, because you can use this one also to scroll, for example, and also to browse the menu. But I think that's just like, it's double, you know? I don't really need this additional stuff then. And then let's go upside. This one here is a very huge compartment to store stuff, for example, your garage beeper and also your beverages, 12 volt power supply. And then let's go up to the climate unit. And this one actually has a beautiful design, but the question is, well, how well is it executed to control? Because we have to push these knobs up and down. You can either control them right here, like hot, cold, or more vent, less vent. This is the first function, and I think it looks really good. Is it really good to control? I doubt so, but you know, it's more for the fancy look. But you can also control it with the central control knob I showed you before. Then you can browse from temperature and like where the vents are coming from, and also control it right there. Then this is the second option. Not sure why is this possible. I would always do it directly with the buttons. Then let's check the rest of the menu, because you can check the GPS, for example, here, as we used to from Mercedes. This is nothing really special. We do have the dynamic select here, however. I will show you more about that later on when we drive. So we can, for example, pick the different setups for the car. And you can also let us show some data when we're in the sport mode of what the car is actually doing. And when I turn on the engine, we see even more. We see the damper informations, and also you see the steering, how much degrees is steer to right and left. Well, some funny features to browse around. You don't really need them, but if you want to show off maybe something, then it's maybe a good thing. Then I can show you also the GPS, maybe just as a last spot for the infotainment system, how that really looks like. And it's a standard GPS we have from Mercedes, and you see the reaction time is actually quite good. Also the whole world stuff down there, and then if we scroll down. And I've made actually quite good experiences with that one. Also always wanted to reach to my destinations and never had any problem. This is the place where you can pick the driving modes. Then you also get the information about that in the screen. Quite fancy, by the way, the LED lights in the ceiling of the car. You also like them. And now an overview of the storage spaces in the car, inside of the doors, also for beverages. Then the standard glove box with not too much space actually. Then this huge box I've shown you earlier, also for 2 beverages. Then in the middle console you can open that one and have all the cables there for the different connections, USB stuff and so on. And finally there's also something for your glasses up there in the ceiling, and you can open it by pressing it. I mean, look at the interior, really great design with artificial leather on the dashboard with contour stitches, the round vents, cockpit style, brushed aluminum, and then, oh wait, we forgot the screen. Let's just put it on there. I think this really looks a little bit misplaced. Also, that's so huge with the frame here. And the overall cockpit overview, how do I rate this interior? Of course, it's nice that you got this sporty touch, for example, the red contour stitches and the brushed aluminum, and also that steering wheel that offers you a great sporty touch as well. However, if you now compare it to the Audi A4 that I've recently driven, the all-new model, even if that wasn't in the sporty version, even in a cheaper version, I must really say it is no match. The Audi is actually way better in the quality in the interior now, the all-new model. It's maybe the very detailed stuff, for example, also in the middle part here, these shiny black elements. I think they can get some scratches quite easily, or just if you leave the fingerprints on there, or even the dust. And also if you go here into the detail, it is definitely a premium quality, no question, and also a very high class quality. But Audi now set the standard even higher if you have the direct comparison here. And also in this very sporty style with the performance seats, you feel a little bit caged in here. well, maybe some people do like that, but I would definitely go for the other seats because they offer you way more space already when sitting inside here. So right now I feel like I would be in a smaller car actually, and that will also apply for the driving later on. One of my favorite elements here in the whole overview are definitely also the round vents. And by the way, this one is opening now, and if you turn them left, they are closed. So you can adjust them, and they add something to this, just from like design-wise, S-Class feeling here. So from the visual aspect, they've definitely taken some parts from the S-Class, but of course the S-Class has a little bit more, of course, in the refinement. However, also these buttons here, also shown you in the S-Class Coupe review, for example, these buttons are always the same. I mean, it's of course just logical that they pick the same elements for different car models, that they also save cost then with it. Let's now check the rear compartment. For this sedan, we don't have a panoramic roof in here, so we still have a lot of headspace. Well, this is kind of above my head, but you know, my hairs are always touching the ceiling. So again, here also the Audi A4 is better as for the headspace, so not really a class-leading car as for the space here in the rear. We have the special performance seats in the front here. They leave you enough of knee space. However, they're kind of low, so you can't really pick your feet below that. So you have to lift it up a little bit. If you're a tall person here behind, you have to tell the driver, could you please lift the seat up a little bit, that you could put your feet under the seat. That would be very important. Just some knee space here. I'm 1.86 m. That would be the setup. I was sitting in the front then, and now I'm here in the back, so you just get an idea. You fall a little bit back here with the rear seats. That's with quite a lot of sedans then, and it's then not too comfortable to sit here. We also got this kind of stiff seating set up here in the rear, so overall I'm not really that convinced of the comfort here in the rear also. What is quite good as for the luxury features is that you separate the climate control here, you can control the vents as well as the temperature in the lower part here. Finally, let's open the trunk, either possible right here or also with this standard Mercedes key. And what is quite remarkable, that it really flips up kind of fast. Well, it does open then without any, electric opening. However, you see also when you want to close it, you have to do it quite hard. Otherwise, you can play around with it here. That's it then. And, be sure that no head of some children are placed here, because then that's so. And how much space do we have? It's a classic sedan, so we don't have too much space. Put a suitcase in here as usual, and a sack of pepper from France. So just to give you an impression of how much space we don't have here actually. Also this, gets a little bit higher here, so really not that much space to put anything here. We do have some flip mechanisms here on each side, and that's also not the best solution, because you have to release it here and then you can go to the front and flip the rear seats. It's not possible to do it from the rear department of the seats. That's it then, but I mean, as you are still able to do it, then you also got some quite long loading space here. That's quite okay then, but not the most flexible solution. Let's start our riding part. This is, by the way, the comfort mode now. But a V6 with 367 horsepower already sounds good in the comfort mode, and that's one of the emotional features of this car. However, you do mostly pay the price with the engine. The engine is the most expensive part here, so this really makes the price difference, and then you can expect some sound at least. And I told you earlier, it's also not that really slower than the C63 version, with that 4.9 seconds from 0 to 100 kilometers. and the C63 is about 0.8 seconds faster, so we really got a great boost here. And then when I pick the sport mode, and that's kind of the most spectacular thing, you can go from comfort to sport, you get suspension on sport, throttle input, and also the steering, and there's also Sport Plus, and then we have even stiffer setup, and this very great boost from the exhaust, and you soon hear it as soon as the traffic light jumps to green. Then what else is important then here when changing the different modes? How far is the spread actually? Because we've recently tested also the A-Class facelift. And there in the AMG version, you really felt a big difference between comfort mode and sport mode. And you could really ride very comfortably on the comfort mode. Here it's also kind of a wide spread between comfort and sport, the difference. But in the comfort mode, it is not as comfortable as the A-Class. That's for sure then. So you really have to think about this is definitely kind of always a very sporty car. That's the sport mode, and well, definitely nothing for driving inside the city because it's really very brutal. And that's, I think, even maybe a little bit more brutal than the high-class AMG version of the A-Class. However, this one is faster than this one here. You also got the all-wheel drive in here. That's also one of the main differences in comparison to the C63. It's a little bit, smoother when accelerating because you got it on all the four-wheel, and also when it's slippery, maybe when it's raining, or also in the winter times, you will have a better time then. Let's accelerate even harder now. Whoa. I mean, you can really just feel like now, oh, I want to go on a racetrack with this one. And I guess you can have very good lap times due to the all-wheel drive, and you also get a little bit less weight in the front because the V8 from the C63 weighs a little bit more than. That will also make a difference. And the Sport Plus mode, yeah, the suspension is very stiff now, great response from the road. But if you ride, over some bumps, then it rather gets a little bit uncomfortable. So I would not recommend the Sport Plus mode in everyday riding. And also the comfort mode. If you go on kind of sharp bumps, you really feel that the general setup of the car is already very sporty. So it's definitely not kind of a cheat AMG version. It feels like it would already be a true AMG version. Also when testing the steering now, you get a really good response. As I said, with other Mercedes models, it could be a little bit more progressive, that need a little bit less steering weight. That I would wish. Let's compare it to the comfort mode then. This really makes a huge difference in steering. Yeah, it's a little bit softer, but I think the steering doesn't change too much for me. It's more really about the suspension then. So let's see now in comfort mode when you accelerate. I think you felt the difference and also heard the difference. I could feel it, of course. Go to the Sport Plus mode again, that you really feel and see the difference, hear the difference. Also when you lift the throttle, maybe you can hear that. Heard that one now? Leave me that one in the comments. And that's of course this very beautiful sporty sound that when you lift the throttle, the exhaust makes this plop. And that's something for an emotional racing heart, definitely. So as I said, the general suspension, very comfortable. However, more already to the sporty side if you have it even if you have it in the C mode. So they've done a very good job here for people who generally like to ride very sporty cars, that's for sure. And I think you won't really miss a C63 here, just from the general driving habits, only if you want to go on, sliding out the rear end of the car quite often. Then you might miss the C63 because that doesn't happen here really with the all-wheel drive. Wow, really impressive. This V6 is definitely enough. Maybe if you go on the racetrack, then you would maybe like the V8 more. But I mean, let's be serious. Who is able to do the real the rear slides and who has the possibility to do it. I mean, just an area with a lot of space. And who wants to do it? Like when these three factors are really fulfilled, then you maybe can go for the V8 and the C63. Anything else, you can really save some money and still go with this one here. That's I think the better choice, and you already feel it while driving. However, what can I criticize when driving? Really the seats. I've told you before in the static interior review, they are horrible. These performance seats, really horrible. I mean, they look cool, yes. But for long-term driving, it's really not comfortable. And also the feeling by driving. I feel now like driving in a compact car or maybe even in a small class segment, even if we're in the middle class, because I make everything kind of feeling so tight and tiny. And I usually don't appreciate that for a middle class car. I've just tested the new Audi A4 and we did not have sports seat in there. And it feels like there are like two classes between the cars, just space-wise. And the same was with the A-Class. Also, I got the performance seats there with the AMG. Then I stepped back to the normal seats and it felt like sitting in a totally different car. You had so much more space just from the feeling. So definitely also, I can tell you here while driving, don't go for the performance seats, even if you like a sporty setup. Now my conclusion on the Mercedes C450 AMG. It's clearly the most clever choice if you go for an AMG model in the C-Class, because the power of the C63, hardly anyone can really use it. This V6 here already has way enough power, and with the all-wheel drive you also got a better suitable car for your everyday driving if you also live in regions where you have a lot of rain or also maybe snow in winter. That makes this car a little bit better then, because with the C63 there's so much power on the rear drives and they easier got the wheels with. If you, however, really want the rear spinning around, then of course that would be a reason to go for the C63. Overall, I think the exterior, especially in the front, is really beautifully done. Also got nice contrasts on the car. However, in general about the C-Class, I don't really like the rear design. That one will be better than with the C-Class Coupe. We are also soon showing you the interior, again as we used from Mercedes, on a high quality level, definitely. Whereas I mentioned that earlier, the new Audi A4 is a little bit better now, even in the interior quality, had a better impression on that. Wouldn't go for the performance seats, just pick the serial seats, and you got the microfiber on the inside, the faux leather on the outside, and also the standard sport seat, not the performance seats, which are very uncomfortable. That would be actually a good choice. And everything else, I wouldn't pick too many extras with this one here, because it's already way more expensive than the standard C-Class version. And besides the sporty features on the outside and the inside, you just have this 2-zone climate control, the ambient light, and then it kind of ends with the special features. GPS, for example, you always have to pay extra. That always costs a lot more money then. Well, from the driving, it was actually a very sporty car, already in comfort mode, but of course you have this choice to make it a little bit more sporty, even a little bit more stiffer, and you already get a very great sound with the V6. So definitely a car when you want a more sporty approach. And then I can say, is it a true AMG? Yes, it definitely is. So that's my conclusion. I hope you enjoyed this Autogefühl episode with Thomas. And I'm sure we will also see us the next time here on Autogefühl.